Hello, I'm going to lecture on 3.1, getting into the history of art. Full disclaimer, this is a jam-packed chapter. Um, in general, you would not take an art history class and go from prehistoric all the way up until the 1900s in 1 week. This lecture is only going to go up to the Roman art, and then I'll do other smaller lectures too. I'm going to weed out some of the works of art from the chapters because we just don't have time in our 5-week class to study every single one in an intense way. So I'm just going to give you the key works that seem to have historical significance and uh, lead from one thing to another in a way, a linear connection, if you will. We're going to look at art in context, which is what art history does, the wheres, the whos, the whats, and the whys, hopefully. That said, when we start with prehistoric art, we can only guess what the whys are, all right? But we can look at what's there and make an educated guess what these people are telling us without actually telling us. So this is the very first image of the chapter, one of the oldest painting ever found yet, I should say. The artists have put their hands on the cave wall and they're blowing pigment around it, red ochre. They're doing it with a hollowed out reed and just blowing this stuff so that they're leaving their handprint, literally leaving their handprint. There's also contour drawings of bison. And in the chapter you read that all of these, like the hands are probably all about the same time, but then the animals were a different time. The cave art that we look at has many, many layers of different tribes, I guess we'll call them, of people coming and going. They are nomadic people, so they follow the herds. And then another tribe will come across this and add their own art. And why are they making it? Well, this seems to be, I mean, we could take an educated guess. They're leaving their mark. They were there, right? But why are they drawing pictures of animals, right? We can only guess. Most of the figures found or the artwork found has to do with women. So we have this called a Venus of Lesel. It's called a Venus by archaeologists, but Venus obviously is later Roman period. It's just called that because it's a female nude, is how it's referred to in art history. So we do have a female nude. She seems to be accentuated for her womanliness. She is holding a horn that has 13 markings on it. One guess that the book gives you, your textbook says, the 13 marks are for her menstrual cycle, emphasizing her fertility or her ability to have children and ensure the tribe will continue. That is one very educated guess, especially when you put it together with many other figures found. These are just two of many, many found. Another Venus figure, again, labeled by an art historian. And Willendorf is where she's found. That's what the title is. So she's very accentuated. She's faceless. And she has these braids in her hair, or curls. This one is, the other one's about a foot big. This one is only 4 inches big. So this is a portable little female figure for whatever reason, right? It has to be mobile because they're nomadic. They're moving around. But what does it mean to the people who made it? Why are they carrying it around? Is it magic? Is it religion? Is it luck? Or is it a portrait? We don't know. We can only guess. And same thing with the paintings, these mysterious. This is the most famous prehistoric painting, the Hall of Bulls in Lascaux, France. It's called a hall because it's this great cavernous place that you crawl into and see. Well, you can't now. It's all closed out to the public. And layers of animals over different time. And you can see the pretty good drawings. It has value in it, right? They're not just contour drawings. They have value, texture. Almost all of them are in profile with the heads twisted, like on the bulls. You still see 2 horns, even though their head might be sideways. So why are they doing this? Why are they bothering to do this when their lives are so mobile and hard with hunting and gathering? It must mean something to them. You could say it's magic, they want it to happen. Is it a record of what happened that day? We don't know. All right, we're jumping way ahead here now to, you can see here, 800s BCE, and I'll just tell you that BCE, if you're not familiar with that, BC is before Christ, but this has been changed recently in history books for before the Common Era, to be more politically correct. This is called the Lamassu. This isn't the only one. This is what this whole figure is called. There's more than these are found around. This is Assyrian. So we've gone from Paleolithic, which is a prehistoric time period, all the way up to Assyrian, which is around the time of Egypt. This is actually newer than some of the work we'll look at in Egypt. All right, so we have this figure that is combined. It has a human head of the king with his long beard, which is a sign of royalty, whether they wore real ones or they just had these sort of like strapped on beards. And then a wings here, like a phoenix rising. All right. And then the lion body. All right. So we have a composite anthropomorphic figure. All right. So this is and we do know what these mean. This is the king's head. So it's a portrait. And then he's taking on the attributes of animals that will give him strength and speed. Right? So we look at this as sort of like a political statement that the king wanted to make to his people about how strong he was. This is Ashurnasirpal. All the Assyrians and Egyptians get the best names. All right, and we're going to notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 legs. All right, so what this is if you're standing in the front, you see 2 legs, but if you come around the side, you would no longer see this leg if you're standing sideways. So this is a case, and we'll see this in Egypt too, of just using common sense. Like there's no way when you look at a certain angle, the king should only have, well, the lion part of the king should only have 4 legs. He needs to have all of his legs present. All right, and we'll see that again. Jumping over to ancient Egypt, and I say ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, because obviously these are places that keep continuing. This is like it's not them now, it's in ancient Egypt. All right, the Great Pyramids of Giza. And you can actually see that Egypt does continue here in the background. So we have these 3 pyramids, these big pyramid shapes. Right, I'm sure you've seen these before. And what do they mean? They're built to house tombs, 1 for each pharaoh. 1 whole pyramid, a giant pyramid for 1 person's burial place. So in each pyramid are these like secret passages to where the tomb is, because it had to be hidden because of all the stuff that the king was being buried with, or the pharaoh. All right, so and then they have to help guard their treasures. They have the Great Sphinx, who's actually for Khafra. It protects his pyramid. And here's King Khafra here. Unfortunately, your book does not show a front view. I'm not sure why. Maybe they don't have the rights to it. But this is a good view because then you can see the falcon, the god Horus, that protects him. And you see him sitting on his throne with his fist clenched. The hieroglyphics, which is Egyptian writing, on it. You have his beard here. All right, and you can see he stares off. He's very strong, muscular, idealized. And he looks very powerful with his profile, his stature, his clenched fists. And he stares out into space. And we call this the eternal stare. Right? The Egyptians are pantheistic, which means they believe in many gods, and they have like the god Horus, they have the sun god Re, they have a god for almost everything that happens in the natural world. And then they believe that their spirit, called the Ka, would live on in the afterlife. and you could take your worldly possessions with you. They could help you in the afterlife. And that is why you need something like this if you have a lot of treasures, right? So all this because one person wants to live in the afterlife as well as they lived in their real life. Egyptian art stays almost exactly the same for thousands and thousands of years. So this is in your chapter, Tomb of Nibam, and you can see how a figure is painted. And this we're going to relate to the Lamassu I just talked about. So we have a twisted torso, right? The torso is frontal, and the legs are in profile, but we can see both of them, right? So it's like the body's just twisted forward, not in a very comfortable way. And then the face is in profile with a very large eye. This is the standard or the formula for always showing people of a certain stature. If you're a nobody, you're smaller, so there's the hierarchical scale. But if you are somebody, you'll have this kind of pose. We call this a twisted pose or a twisted perspective. And this is a formula that artists would have learned in Egypt and passed on, and everybody did it the same way until this man, Akhenaten, and his queen Nefertiti, he changed the state style to this. Don't ask me why. The scrawny arms, they almost look like aliens. These have been called like, these are their children too. They're almost like little alien babies, right? So everything's very elongated. Right? And he wanted to be seen as a gentle father figure to the country rather than a ruler. You can see this guy's like literally ruling with an iron fist here. Right? He wanted to change the image of the king. So he used art to help him do that. Akhenaten, Atan, he changed the sun god from Re to Atan, and then he called himself the son of Atan, so the son of the Sun King. And when Akhenaten died and the golden boy king took power, he changed it right back. The style of old Egypt was back. And so this is one of the most famous Egyptian pieces other than the pyramids. This is the mask of King Tut or Tutankhamun, literally buried with this. His tomb was open and his treasures hit the road in whatever it was, the I don't know what, 70s maybe. Made a lot of money, and now and then it comes back around. So the burial practices of mummification are only, of course, not everybody could have that. It's a very elaborate system. I'm not going to talk about that. That might be somebody's research paper in the future. Just know that they went to great lengths to bury chosen people and made elaborate things that would be buried with them. So here we see the boy king staring out at us, symmetrical, idealized, eternal stare, made of gold, shows power. All right, jumping over to ancient Greece. And ancient Egypt and Greece sort of overlapped, so it's not that much of a jump. The Acropolis is, we call it the Acropolis in Athens, but an Acropolis is just a hill with buildings on it, and there are plenty of those around Greece. Just the Acropolis is the one in Athens. It's the best known. It's dedicated to Athena, which is also what Athens is named for. She was their patron goddess. Right? So the original was burned down, and then the Parthenon was built, a great building project for what they thought was the most perfect building that ever was. And this is what it looks like now, of course. Those are the architects. So now we have written history. You saw that with the hieroglyphics of Egypt. So now we know, like, even who the artists and architects are, who commissioned them, who's paying for it. Probably not the builders. Those are just workers or slaves. Um, so this is what it looks like now up on the hill, up on the Acropolis with the other buildings. And this is just a reconstruction drawing. You can see these columns surrounding. It's called peristyle when columns surround. We're not going to give you too many terms. If you take a survey class, you'll get all that stuff. We've got the frieze here, and I'm pointing this out because some of the sculptures we'll look at are from there. And then this is the pediment here, this triangle. So it's all decorative and has some sculptural program, we call it. Right? This one has to do with the conquering of Athens. And then all of these are the different wars, right? The centaurs and things like that. The Greeks are great builders. They came up, but this is over time. This is the first order that they made all their architecture, and this would have been the first Parthenon that burnt down, and the last one is actually, this is the one that it's made out of. So we have a column and all these things, pediment up here. All right, so it's Doric is plain, then Ionic, and you can remember that by the eyes, these circles, and the fluted column, so everything's getting fancier. And then Corinthian, it really gets fancy, right? Corinthian has these acanthus leaves, this natural volutes happening. All right, so you can see the evolution, and we'll see this again and again in art history. Oops, let me go back though. Just to point out, the post and lintel construction just means there's a post, which is the column, and the lintel would be the part here. So all these are almost what we use in construction now, right? We have like timber frames, you know, that there are pieces of wood, timber that go vertical, and then they hold up the giant pieces that are horizontal with a foundation, right? This is very much our building construction for residential buildings now. And this is some of the sculpture from the Parthenon. That's cool. So we see that the not only are the Greeks tremendous builders, but they're excellent sculptors. They could take marble and make it look more human than you can believe, right? So this is relief sculpture, but it's deep relief sculpture. These are almost unattached from the main block. And then these would have been in the pediment. You can see the shape of half the triangle here, right? This would have been the top, and then go back down for the whole pediment. So the sculptor had to sort of pose all of the figures so that they would fit perfectly into the pediment. And these are all marble. So if you know anything about sculpting, you get a giant block of marble and you have to sort of visualize what's in it and carve it out. And there's no going back if you make a mistake. It's just incredible when we look at these. And hopefully you read in your book The Controversy Over the Parthenon Marbles. As you can see here, they are in the British Museum in London. The most famous building of ancient Greece, which is still there, does not have a lot of its sculptures. They are in London. Taken by Lord Elgin, who believed he had the right to do it. There was, during a war, there was an interim government in Greece who agreed to let Elgin take the marbles. They're called the Elgin marbles, which they are the Parthenon marbles. And this goes on now. The Greeks want them returned. They have been suing for them. And I'm going to leave it at that because some of you might want to write your paper about that too. And then this is the last thing we'll look at, the Greek chapter. That's, oh no, it was one more. We have the artist Praxiteles, right? Takes a piece of marble and we can see that it's getting very lifelike. And he does this thing that is called this contrapposto, where the weight is on one leg. So making figures look as if they're moving wasn't enough. He wanted to make them look as if they are standing naturally and that they can lift their own legs. So that it's incredible to do this with stone. And you can see he has this, it's wedged here as like a little lever to help with the weight. And again, this is going very, very quickly because of your book and our time restraints. But this would have been equivalent, say, to the Doric column. We have this chorus. This would have been a grave marker. This is very, very early ancient Greece, and you can see the Egyptian influence, right? They've got the big eyes, almost the same clenched fist as King Khafra. And we have a little baby step forward, but it's not a natural pose, right? He's just sort of like sticking his leg out, knees locked. All right. Then this is much later, ancient Greece. And you can see the evolution here of the contrapposto, the natural muscle tone, the more naturalistic face, the proportions. Even though they're idealized, they are like the perfect human athletic person. Right? So this is a quick evolution. And then Laocoon and his sons, this is a very late. This is one of the last Greek periods of ancient Greece. And you can see that this is totally moving. It's not just walking. Now it's like twisting back, right? And moving. All right, over to Roman art, and this overlaps. Once Rome takes over, it absorbs many of the artistic traditions of conquered cultures. So this is sort of how history and art history work. That we don't have to wonder how style is so transferred from one place to another. It's because the people are transferred as well. And this is actually from your book. It says this absorbed many of the artistic traditions. Mostly, it's the Greeks that they are obsessed with, and they cannot do enough to copy the Greeks. In fact, they would make portraits of their own citizens and or patricians, people of power and wealth, would get their portraits done in sculpture, of course. Painting wasn't a huge thing until a little bit later. The Romans did start painting. They painted their houses. These are like death masks that he's holding. All right, so you can see here that these are super realistic. These actually look more like portraits than those idealized faces of the Greeks. But you can see they learned all the lessons from the contrapposto that that the Greeks gave them. The biggest invention of the Romans is the arch construction. So remember, we had post and lintel for the Greeks. All right, and now we have this arch construction, which helps to make things taller because it gets the weight coming out this way. So you can make more hollow spaces. All right, so this is the Arch of Constantine. This is where soldiers would have marched through after war with all the spoils of war and then give them to their leader. All right, we'll get back to Constantine in a second. Probably the most famous Roman building, other than the next one I'm going to show you, right, is made of all arches. And you can see here, if you look closely, the different orders of Greek architecture. We have Doric, Ionic, Corinthian. It's like a textbook lesson on how to make a Greek building with Roman engineering. And I'm going to leave the Colosseum at that because some of you might be writing your paper on that. You know that the Colosseum was a place for, and I'm doing air quotes now, entertainment for ancient Romans. It certainly was not entertaining for the people who were in the center performing. Lots of them being Christians being persecuted or slaves, fighting lions, whatnot. I'm sure you've heard of the movie Gladiator. All right, and then the last Roman building we'll look at is the Pantheon. So remember I said the Egyptians are pantheistic. Pantheon just means a temple to all gods. All right, so Emperor Hadrian builds it, and it uses the Corinthian order. It is a later building. So here we have, I hope you can see this makes a very nice comparison to the Parthenon, not to be confused with the Pantheon. Just remember Pan meaning all gods. Parthenon is just for Athena. All right, so we have the pediment here, we have the frieze, and we have the Corinthian columns. However, when you go inside that front part, it's just like it's stuck to this other thing, which is a giant dome with an oculus, which is the eye, and this is actually open without glass. If you go there, and I have not been here, the rain just comes in, and so do the birds sometimes. But you can see the arches here, right? And then some more Greek columns, made little tiny pediments here. All right, so it's like a mishmash of Roman and Greek things put together because the Romans just were in love with it. All right, that is the end of this section.